Welcome to episode 4 of Kicking Ass and Taking Names, a podcast for small and mid-sized business owners on law, business, and life. I'm your host, Marlon Griffith, owner and principal litigator at the Griffith Law Group, a business litigation boutique where we defend the Davids from the Goliaths. This week's episode is titled A Conversation with a Fractional CEO, Janelle Sam. Before we get to that, I must ask you all, please subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on YouTube at the Griffith Law Group or on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at Kicking Ass and Taking Names. My guest this week is Janelle Sam, who has been a fractional CEO for a number of years. I think you will find her to be passionate, dynamic, and knowledgeable. In this week's episode, we will cover some issues. We will explore issues including the role of a fractional CEO, which includes helping the owner with strategic vision, helping the owner with strategic planning, and holding the owner accountable to the plan and the vision. We'll also explore and discuss how an owner's relationship with money affects his or her decision making. Also, we get into how recognizing your own limitations can actually grow your business. Yes, it can actually grow your business. But before we get into that conversation with Ms. Sam, I recently read a book titled 10 times is easier than 2 times, where you can accomplish more with less effort. And of course, it caught my attention. I can accomplish more by doing less. And as I explored the book, and the premise of the book, and before we get into that, the book, the authors, put on my glasses, but the authors are Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. The book argues or posits that effort alone is not what produces exponential results. That exponential growth comes from the evolution of yourself, including your thinking, and you and your company's capabilities. And that what it takes to increase your growth 10 times or 10x is you need to discard 80% of what it took for you to get where you are and hyper-focus on the 20% that you need to accomplish your goal. Now, it doesn't mean that the 80% that you discard, that you just do away with. It really argues or theorizes that you should delegate 80% of what it took, of the things you did to get where you are. You should delegate that to capable people who can now take on those responsibilities. And the 20% of what it took is what you now need to focus on, hyper-focus on, to develop in order to make the next 10 times or the 10x growth. It's an understanding, and I just mentioned that part of what we discuss in the podcast is how owners' recognition of their own limitations actually leads to growth. Well, I'm not going to wait for the commercial before I tell you kind of what that means. In order to grow your business, you must consistently and continuously evolve in your way of thinking. What it took for you or what it takes to grow a business to six-figure gross revenue is not what it's going to take to grow a business to a seven-figure gross revenue. And what it took to grow a seven-figure gross revenue business is not what it's going to take to grow or to build an eight-figure gross revenue business. But it starts with you. And you understanding that you must you must continue to evolve the way you think. And part of that evolution is that you will recognize that the capabilities of yourself and the capabilities of your business needs to change in order to continue to reach exponential growth. And this podcast is the beginning of how to engage your C-suite, CEO, CFO, COO, CMO, General Counsel, also known as CLO, to help you evolve in your thinking and to help increase your company's capabilities in order to continue to grow. Hello, welcome to my next episode of Kicking Ass and Taking Names, a conversation with. Today's guest is a CEO of, used to be fractional CEO, now a full-time CEO, Janelle Sam. Janelle, I'm going to read your bio, Janelle. Janelle Sam is CEO of Seabrook Law Offices, headquartered in San Jose, California. She has over 20 years of experience as a highly skilled executive advisor, entrepreneur, and media influencer. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Corporate Communications, cum laude no less, from Baruch College. Let's go New York. With a Master's of Business Administration from Cornell University. Let's go New York State. It's a theme here, Janelle. She was recognized as one of the top 50 women leaders in Houston in 2022 by Women We Admire and has a track record of delivering results. Additionally, she has worked as a fractional CEO in the legal industry, helping law firm owners manage and grow their firms profitably with results as high as 135% growth in as little as 2 quarters. We got to talk about that, Janelle.
We will.
Janelle is passionate about helping business owners connect to their why. The fuel drives the engine to reach its strategic and financial objectives. Ms. Sam's career started in financial services, where she managed administrative operations as an outsourced account manager at companies such as Goldman Sachs, Bank of America Securities, Macquarie, and Bain & Company. She led a significant growth in the financial and operational efficiencies of accounts with multi-million-dollar revenue streams. Welcome, Janelle.
Thank you, Marlon, and thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be a treat. Now, before we get into what it is that you do, get into the specifics, I know you want to tell the story. You've told the story of how we met. I want to give you the opportunity.
Do we really?
Put it in your own words. We don't have hours. I do think it's informative about both of us. So please, the floor is yours.
I mean, how we met, Marlon. I mean, this story is just. I think it's one for the books. For those who are listening, if you're not watching the actual video, if you've never met Marlon in person, you're very tall. What's your height? 6'4", 6'5"?
6'3.5". Yep.
6'3". Okay, so 6'4". I was like, I'll round up, right? And you've got this muscular build, so you have this imposing presence wherever you are. And it was at this event for attorneys, and you were talking with a group of men, all of you very tall, and I'm 5'7". So I come up to you. And I'm looking. I didn't know who you were, right? Because I hadn't met you before, but I was told that you wanted to speak to someone. So came up to you, and I'm looking up at you because you're so tall. And you were upset, whatever I can't remember what it was. You're upset about, something you wanted, and you saw me, and I think you went into this lawyer, like, you litigate and this whole persona, and, and I'm looking at you, and I'm very calm. And I'm like, okay, sir. Like, pretty much, I'm like, you don't have to calm down. We will have this conversation. But, you know, there's more of you than there are of me, so we're going to have a conversation in a very different tone. So, I mean, it was just such an interesting way that we met. But since then, I think it's that, I bring this regardless of my height, my size, whatever it is in any room. I'm not quite intimidated.
Yes, yes.
I don't get
I
intimidated.
can vouch for that. I can vouch for that. So let me put a little context to it. I'm part of a law an organization that kind of help lawyers who own small firms build a business.
Yes.
And you were part of that organization at
Yes.
one point. You had a particular role. And reasons kind of informative for this particular uh, podcast is because I was in line to have what we call a fractional CEO, which is what we're going to talk about today. But it was a little bit slow coming to the table. I hadn't gotten my fractional CEO, and I wanted my fractional CEO. It says your title at the time it's kind of like head of let's say client services. I put it that way. We were at the conference, and I sought out like who's this Janelle who's head of client services. As we said, we've
I was
never
a
met.
member of. I wasn't the head of, but yes.
Yes, you
Yes.
fall out, so you had influence. So my personality, I sought out the person that had the influence and kind of made it clear to you what I wanted. And yes, you were obviously very, very professional, and you didn't look up, but you never withered in any way. And I was like, yeah, that's what this is all about. And so that's how our relationship started. You're no longer with that organization. I'm still involved with that organization, and that's now get us to kind of what it is that you do. Just describe to my audience, right? Which, as you know, are mostly small and mid-sized business owners. What is it that a fractional CEO? What can a fractional CEO do for their business?
To answer that question, I have to first describe what it means to be successful and the
Hmm.
role that someone who is in an advisory position for someone who owns a business plays. A successful business is nothing more than a series of successful decisions. It's no one big thing. If you're making a series of successful decisions, the better those decisions, the better the outcome that you have in not just your professional life, financial life, but also personal. It's really decision. Your life is nothing but decisions. And so the role that an advisor in a CEO role, a COO role, or a CFO role is to help the business owner and the people within the business make better decisions to improve the outcome. That's simply put, that is what it is. And how do we do that, right? So when we look at someone who starts a business, in this case, for you, you're an attorney, you have a law firm. You went to school, you learned how to practice law, you understand the craft that you have. You didn't go to school for business, though. And so many business owners try to figure it out. If you didn't come from a family of business owners who understand the decisions that impact the results you're going to get, you're just winging it. You're figuring it out. You probably will be making money, but you might be losing it as fast as you made it.
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
maybe you are profitable, but in order to remain so, you are working 200 hours a week. You have no life. You lose your family. You lose your friends. It becomes lonely. How do you find that balance? And that's the role an advisor in any capacity is supposed to play. So the organization that you and I met under does this wonderfully, especially when you're a new business owner as an attorney. You might have been an attorney for years and then decided you wanted to open up your practice. But if you've not been taught how to run the business of law, it can be quite daunting.
Yes, I know that firsthand. And so let's say this. I noticed that you have when you were before you became a full-time CEO for this current law firm? You were performing what they call fractional CEO services for another business that was not related to
Law,
law
correct.
firms, right? So what are the similarities did you find in that, and what are the differences?
Lots of similarities. When it
Okay.
comes to business, uh, it's the foundations of a business. There are just some rules. It's like gravity. You've got to follow it. You have to follow it. So yes, I left working with attorneys to go work with other industries. And that company, if um, I don't know, is it okay? I don't mind seeing it because they also do a really wonderful job. Um, they work with small companies. So according to the U.S., a small company in the U.S. government is any company that has under $250 million in revenue, right? Anything from zero to that amount, you're considered small. And so they work with, it's what we like to call the middle America, right? Many of these
Hmm.
business owners aren't very large, family owned, handed down, and in different industries. So from the blue collar, from landscaping to mill work to
Hmm.
manufacturing, rep, like different companies, completely different industries, but the fundamentals are the same. If you're a business owner, it doesn't matter if you're an attorney, an architect, an engineer, you own a landscaping company, you own a manufacturing company. If you don't understand how to read financials, if you don't know how what you do in the business is directly impacted your bottom line, or understanding how to grow wealth and reading your balance sheet and knowing what should be there, what shouldn't be there. If you don't know how to hire the right people to help you do that, it can be a very expensive, a very emotionally draining, mentally draining, financially draining ordeal. So there is a lot of similarities. This is why we have. I went to school. I went to school for this, right? So I went to Cornell and did a Master of Business Administration, and we analyzed a lot of businesses in different industries, from global companies with billions on the books to some smaller companies, and understanding the nuances, but really delving into there are laws of economics that impact everybody, regardless of the industry that you're in. There are statistical metrics that are needed in your business, regardless of the industry that you're in. There's an organizational structure, understanding how to structure your organization so it is aligned with the strategy and the financials. Doesn't really matter what business you're in. Many similarities. Now, there are things that are different. There are differences. A professional services firm, like an attorney or an engineering firm, may not have a plant. You may not have inventory. You may not have a fleet of vehicles, and you need to, like, there's some things that's different, right?
Yeah.
And so yes, there's business principles that will affect those that if you've got those elements within your business. But in general, when you're leading an organization, there's so much that is needed in terms of knowledge and skill set that becomes more complex the bigger you become. When you're small, you do it all. You
Right.
become bigger, you better not be doing your own books, because that's going to cost you. You got to hire somebody who understands, who trained for managing books.
Yes.
You
Yes.
didn't go to school for
Yes.
technology? Make sure you've got that skilled person who can analyze, is your technology talking to each other, or are you overpaying and getting an underutilizing what can optimize the way you work? If you
Yes.
didn't do that, you better hire the right person.
Yes.
Human
In my
resources. Yeah,
right.
all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I would tell the story as I speaking of 0 to 250 million. I at one point I represented what I thought was large at the time was a nonprofit that was about 60 to 70 million dollars in revenue as a nonprofit. It's pretty large for a nonprofit. And one of the things that I did a lot of work on was that they would have like 2 or 3 signed contracts for the same services with different vendors. Right.
Very
So I
inefficient.
spent a lot of time try to get help them get out of certain contracts. Like you're having redundancy and you're paying this money for the same thing. Um, and it was other basic operational issues that they would have that it was signed contracts that I would say, wait, are we using this, or they not were happy with that particular vendor or whatever, and I was trying to help them get out of that. So And so the question became, how did they get to that point, right? How did they get to the point where you have duplicitous, multiple and redundant contracts for the same services and so forth and so on? But I know, like when we spoke, we've had numerous conversations. And yes, I do have my own CEO. You were never my CEO, but I do have a CEO, and actually I now have a new CEO recently. One of the things that you all focus on initially, right? And it's the seven parts of a business plan, but it's the you part, right? Everything begins with the you part. So, kind of talk to me about how do you, deal with your client or clients for dealing with the you part first.
It takes a special type of thinking to run an organization. And in many instances, there's this misperception that to set goals to drive a business comes from this outside source of what things should look like, when ultimately it's an internal guidepost. And what I mean by that is you have to think about, what do I want from this business? Or why did I create it? In some instances, it wasn't created. Businesses can be handed down. So you might have inherited it and you weren't the original creator of the business. Or you could have been hired into it, got promoted up, and something with the change of the structure, now you're running it. And regardless of really what the beginnings were of how you ended up in the position of running and driving the direction of the business, you have to be honest with yourself and think, well, what do I want out of this? What's important to me? If it's important to have time with your family, then your driving goal in the business is to be able to allow that to happen and allow that to also happen for the people who are in your business. Does that make sense? So it's staying core to your values. It's your why. Like why do you do anything?
Mhm.
If you have a business and all you want from it is money, but not talking about what the money will allow you to do, you're going to run into problems really fast.
What's that? Tell me.
Money should never be the end goal. What you want to do with the money, what you want the money to allow you to do, is what should be the goal that drives the decisions in the business. Otherwise, you can breed toxicity, burnout, attrition, all sorts of problems just by making a shift. If you're just looking at, we need to hit this dollar amount just because I want to see that number and there's nothing meaningful behind it, guess what? You're going to drive all of your policies within the business to that end. It's all about the money, even if I burn out my employees. It's all about the money. So what if we hire someone who's not skilled within the position to do it? This can happen in a for-profit or a non-profit. The only difference between the two business organizations is one can keep the profit, the other cannot. But sometimes ego gets in the way, and it's like, this sounds good if I could be a non-profit and I have $100 million in revenue. When you see things like redundancies, it's because of the decisions internally within the business that were made. Without it knowing all the facts, I could take a very good guess that the person who is making the decisions isn't skilled for the job, yet they're still in the job because they're probably lower paid or whatever it is, or some sort of comfort level of mediocrity has settled into that organization. I've seen it. I have seen it. When someone like me comes in and I look at it and I'm reading, I'm like, oh, you want to know why you were not profitable? Here, you've got people who don't have the skill set for what you hired them for. In the beginning, they may have had it. Someone who has had experience managing an organization when it's under 100,000 or 500,000 or a million may not be the same person who can manage it when it reaches 5 million, 10 million, or 15 million. Because unless they themselves have invested in their own personal growth to understand what changes in a business that's beyond something they've ever been in, you are setting yourself up for them to fail and for the business to struggle.
I want to touch on that because this is you just touched on exactly why I wanted to do this particular episode. Because you just said you were actually speaking about a person in that you have in place in your business who maybe have experience running $100,000 or $500,000 business but not skilled for $1 million business. Most of us never look at ourselves that way. But it starts with you,
It does.
and that so the concept of the fractional CEO is, as I said in prior podcasts, you are your CEO,
Mhm.
right? You are your CEO, and when you're trying to grow your business, you have to grow yourself,
Yes, you
right?
have
That's the
to.
key, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
you may be able
Or
to run a hundred
or
thousand dollar business.
or
You may be able
if you
to
don't
go ahead.
right.
Or you may be able to run a
I was
half million
what I was
dollar
going to
business.
say.
Sure, go ahead.
Right. So here's what a good CEO or the owner of a business does is recognize where your limitations are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you're investing in yourself, you are aware of where your limitations are. When you see, hold up, I don't know how to structure a firm at 100 million. It would behoove you to hire or find that advisor or hire that employee who can do that. That's how you grow. Because if the goal is something of what you want to what the money to do, and you're not just focusing on just the dollar amount of the money, you will make a decision to make that outcome a reality through leveraging the knowledge and skill set of someone who may know more than you. This is what we mean by the good leaders surround themselves with people who know more than them. This is the premise of that. If you as an owner you're doing everything and you know everything, 100% guaranteed, you're going to have a firm or a business that's going to stop at a certain revenue level and it's going to be wrought with inefficiencies and toxicity and attrition and poor customer service, guaranteed. You won't
You
grow.
know,
You won't go very far. There's going to be a cap. You're going to be stuck financially.
sure,
Yeah, you're going to be stuck.
sure. There's a saying that I have is, particularly in business, is I don't want to be right. It's not as important for me to be right. It's more important for me to get it right. Right.
That's so important. Yes.
And so I might have my theory, my thesis, this, that, but then I use the services of certain professionals who
Mhm.
have more experience in a certain area. And if the advice is to do this, I don't just go, yes, I'll do whatever you want. Is it, obviously just like with your CEO, it's not you're just gonna tell me what to do and I'm gonna do it. And I want to make sure that's clear. It's always it's a partnership, right?
It
It's
is.
always a discussion. You go back and forth, and then you settle on whatever decision you're gonna make. But it is a back and forth. You're not having someone come in as a fractional CEO of your business and say, well, okay, this is what you need to do. This is what you're gonna do. Now
That's right.
let's
Well,
execute.
because a business is not a democracy, right? Let's make sure we get that right. This is not a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It
Mm-hmm.
is almost it has more of a structure of a military operation, which
Okay.
is the generals will have advisors and will give input, but ultimately the decision lies with the most senior person, which in a business is the owner, regardless of who is giving the advice. Which is why, to your point, it's not like you're told and you just do as you're told, because no
Yeah.
matter what is done by whom, all of the consequences, good or bad, fall on you as
Falls
the
on
owner.
you. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Now, curious, is there any difference? How do you deal with uh, companies that have like partnerships, multiple people in position of ownership?
Oof. How do you deal with that? Oh my gosh, I don't like dealing with it at all. Here's the thing. People get into business as a partnership for many reasons, and also it depends on the structure of the business. For example, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to carve out law firms. In order for law firms to have a succession plan, it can't just be a family thing. You have to have a law degree. I believe there's only like 2 states, 4 states where um, you cannot like where you can have ownership in a business and not have a law degree, right? But
That's
in
right. Mm-hmm.
general, you have to have
Yeah.
a law degree. So in law firms, you want to have partnerships, but not an equitable partnership. That's where we run into problems. You want
Please
somebody to
explain the
be
difference.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So equitable means a 50-50 partnership, or there's three and everybody is 33.3, 33.3, 33.3. That is problematic. It's problematic because it creates a scenario where it is difficult to have one vision. You can, but if we have three people in charge with three different personal whys, with three personal prior experiences, all at the helm, that tends to set the business up for failure at some point. Contention will happen, disagreements will happen, and because we've got the equitable, there is no one leader who can be like, regardless of how the decisions make, they're the ones who take ownership of it. I have seen that. It's very rare that I see an equitable partnership thrive. Very, very rare. I think I've seen it only once. And I'm like, it was just such a unicorn. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just never really see this. I don't recommend it. You always want to have some split where one person is that visionary, is that leader, who the deciding vote comes that they get to make it, and everybody else understands that and can fall in line. Because again, it's not a democracy.
But
I'm
let's
not a big
talk.
fan of
So,
partnerships. I'm really not a big. I'm not. I'm
you've
sorry. I'm
made
not a
that
big
very
fan of
clear.
equitable partnerships. That's what
Yes.
I would say because it's like a marriage. It's identical to a marriage without the fun parts.
So I'm going to say it a different way. What your suggestion is that you have seen successful partnerships work, but typically it would be in a situation where at least one of the partners has most of the managing control, a certain
Majority.
percentage that allows them a
Yes.
majority, that
Yes.
allows them to make certain decisions regarding the
Yes.
partnership, as opposed to partnerships where everything is equal shares and basically it requires some kind of unanimous decision, unanimity, or so
Yes.
forth, and that kind of often gets these businesses stuck because decisions
Yes.
can't be made because everyone is not in agreement,
That's right.
right? And that can be very challenging.
You
All right,
know,
so go ahead.
before we go on from that, sorry to interrupt you there, but this is why, when going into a business partnership, and I've seen this, and it gets ugly. You have to look at this as a marriage. You have
Mm,
to literally, not, I mean, in the sense of how a marriage would traditionally work, which is you got to understand the personalities, the personal lives, the personal goals, their perceptions, their biases. Like, you need to understand that because if you don't
mm-hmm,
and you get into a business partnership, you're now hooked to this person,
mm-hmm,
right? And if
mm-hmm.
one has a bias that you're on the opposite, even that could make the partnership disintegrate. So it's not
Yeah,
just about do you have the skill set in the industry that we're opening this business in.
sure,
It
sure.
is what are your belief systems? What do you believe about gay marriage? What do you believe about minorities? What do you believe about politics? What do you believe? Belief systems come into play in a partnership, business and marriage. And this is where
Mm,
it's identical. What are your value systems? And
mm-hmm.
many people don't do that. They get all like, oh, we're going to open this business and we're good at this and we'll just work together with no real understanding of the value systems that they're entering into a partnership with. And that is what disintegrates the business because they realize they were not on the same page. And it's like a divorce
Yes.
when you try to separate a business. The process is because when you go through a divorce, right? I've been through it, and I am now, I'm working, I'm leading a family law firm. It's a business when you're dissolving a marriage. It's the assets, it's the people, it's who gets what. It's a business, which is why in a business partnership, it's no different.
Okay. Now let's and obviously I agree with you on that very much so, Janelle. Now, if you are going to when you have been providing these services, what are some of the let's just say the top three issues that you've seen that you have to deal with or you confront that seem to be pretty much consistent across the board, whether it's legal services, businesses, or other types of industries? What are the three things that you tend to see or that you have to work on with these small businesses?
The mindset, one out, number one. I first have to make sure that the business owner that I'm working with understands what it means to show up as a business owner versus an employee. Now, because there's a shift that happens when you first open a business, especially if you started from nothing, it wasn't handed to you. You are working as an employee in the business to get it off the ground.
Sure.
Everything is you,
Hmm.
right? But as the business becomes more complex and starts to grow, more complicated, you have to shift into thinking like a business owner in terms of one, all the work shouldn't be done by you. In fact, you stagnate the business if you're the one who's doing all of the work. You have to learn to hire and delegate and not be so centered in the business that if you stop working, the business stops working. So that requires, it's a mindset shift, which many small business owners struggle to do on their own. Many, not all. There are a few. There's always like exceptions, right? There are the business owners who somehow kind of figure it out. But in many instances, without some sort of professional guidance, they are stuck working as an employee in the business. There's a very different approach to financials. There's a different approach to hiring. There's a different approach to everything. So working on that mind shift as a business owner, you have to dissociate from everything that's in the business, right? Until you're doing what is most valuable to the business, which is you're working on the strategic plan, the strategic direction of the business.
So when you talk about the mindset as a
Mhm.
business owner, well, let me put it a different way. What you are talking about is working with the business owner to allow him or her to just let somebody else do some of those things.
Yes.
Because a lot of us are so protective of
Yes.
what we do, protective of the reputation that we've built,
Yes.
protective of the product that we've put out there, that we
Yes.
really don't want anybody else. Like we're like, I don't
Right.
know if I can let somebody else do this. I got to
That's
be the one
exactly
that's
right.
doing it. And your point is that's what actually stagnates you. That's what actually prevents you from growing.
Exactly.
Is that you're not delegating, and this is particularly related to the production part of whatever service you provide,
Yes.
allowing someone else to a qualified person, obviously, to
Yes.
be part of that production, to take some of that production away from you, to allow you to work on those other things. So that's really the mindset piece, right? Is it's
That is what it
okay
is.
to
Yes.
let someone else do some of your work. Your
Yes.
reputation will not go to crap
And
because
it's
you're
an
allowing
identity
somebody else.
issue. It's an identity
Yes.
issue because it's started off they were identified in the production of that service, or they
Mm-hmm.
usually I see it more in the service side of it. In a
Yes. Mm-hmm.
manufacturing, it's a little bit different in terms of like if it's a factory plant, like you really can't do everything. You have to have employees. So I would say
Mm-hmm.
it skews a lot on professional services where
Mm-hmm.
you've identified with I am a good attorney. I'm the best attorney. Nobody could do it like me. Okay, well, then that business will stay small if that's the thinking until you shift into being a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
And what you want is to become the identity of the overall firm, the firm itself, not the actual litigation or the production that you're doing to your clients. What is the
Sure.
reputation of the firm, regardless of which attorney, of which paralegal, legal assistant is working on it?
Yes. Yes.
And that
Yes.
requires a mindset shift,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Would you
So,
would
yeah.
would you also agree that one of the mindset shifting piece too is the business owner's relationship with money?
I think that's a whole other podcast.
Yes, yes. And we're not gonna
That's
stop
a
there.
whole other
I do
podcast
want you to
because
touch on that
all
because
right. So yes, let me. There is a mindset with money which is stemmed from, unfortunately, our early childhood upbringing. What did you grow up in shows up in how you have this relationship with money. This is something I'm going to say that some business, if you're hearing this for the first time, let's say you've never had any kind of advising, I'm going to say something. I can't tell you how many business owners I've worked with, and I said you need to be in therapy, and they look at me, nothing's wrong with me, nothing's fine, because there's not an awareness. I'm sorry, excuse me. There's not an awareness of what is showing up in the business through unhealed traumas that they refuse to address. If you grew up poor, if you grew up very, very poor, you tend to make very costly mistakes in your business because of a fear of scarcity. Or if you grew up where your image is so important, you're going to make decisions about an image versus an underlying real need for the business. Many of us have childhood traumas that we just haven't addressed that shows up in the business. I spend a lot of my time as a therapist. I'm I'm not a therapist, but I've had to have a lot of therapy myself, a lot of reading, a lot of development in order to recognize in myself things that were showing up for me, right? And having done that and worked with many others in terms of being able to identify what's showing up in them, there's a direct correlation. This is not something that's a textbook fix. If you are still trying to survive because your childhood was one of just surviving, if you're still trying to survive, you're going to be in a business where you operated from that space inside of you. What does that look like? What do you mean survive versus thrive? This ties up to the why you're doing it. If you're still in the business because you're trying to feel secure because you grew up with lack, you're going to hold on. You're going to make decisions that it's going to be very ironic. It is going to create more scarcity for you versus creating abundance. You're going to have a fear of spending. So, for example, you grew up with scarcity and you're still trying to survive, and your thinking is, if I do this, I will lose money. You'll do something such as making your first hire somebody who's very junior and who's very inexperienced, which is going to create scarcity because you need somebody who's going to cost you a little bit more, but who can do the work to allow you to now do what you need to do so you can have the abundance. But instead, if you go with somebody junior, it's going to create, now you have to take your time to train this person, which takes away from your production, which then lowers your revenues, so there's this domino effect. And having made
Yeah.
a decision from a space of scarcity, you've created the environment where more scarcity persists.
I think that, with when you are attempting to grow, and I said this in one of my earlier podcasts, you really cannot grow your business unless you invest in growing yourself.
Yes.
And I didn't really get into a lot of details about what that means, but you're kind of touching on that, right? Um, because in this instance, we're talking about a relationship with money, and I didn't say a bad relationship with money, a good relationship with money. I don't judge but everyone has a relationship with money,
Mhm.
whatever that may be. And like
Mhm.
you said, a lot of it is probably impacted by how you were raised and how you grew up. But a
Mhm.
lot of times we don't recognize that it affects the decisions we make in our business, which is what you're talking about, and
And
it
personalized,
can
yeah,
cost
everything.
you, right. And actually, it's counterproductive because actually, might actually your scarcity mentality, for example, is actually what was you think you're holding on to money because you have more of it. You think
Right.
theoretically you have more of it, but you actually don't realize how much money you're losing
That's right.
because you're not investing in the things you need to invest in.
That's
Which is
exactly
that
right.
DIY mentality of do it myself, do it yourself. I'm gonna do it all myself. I'll answer my own phones.
Right.
I'll be my own accountant. I'll be my own chief financial officer. I'm gonna do my own marketing. I'm
Right.
gonna do all that myself. I might
Or if
hire
they're going to hire, I'll just hire the cheapest person if they're not good because, well,
right,
it's cheap, which is
right,
subpar
yeah,
service,
right.
or not investing in advice. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to pay, consulting, I'm not going to pay for that.
That's right.
Okay.
Like
Then
how
see
many
what
people?
happens without the advice that will help you, as we said at the beginning, help you make better decisions to make you profitable.
Absolutely. Having gone through it myself, that when you hire, for example, someone who has a day job who has his side hustle to do websites, and they're going to build your website, and the cost is so low. Like, oh, I do that, but then it takes forever for them to get the website done, and then when they do get it, and it's things you want to change, you can't get back in touch with them. They're not reactive. All those things that you thought you were saving money up front
That's right.
by paying them a few dollars to do a college student or whatever it was to do your website, you don't realize that down the road, what you're really paying for is the quality and the accessibility,
That's right.
right?
Which turns around to higher quality and accessibility means you're more
That's right.
agile as a business, which allows you to make changes faster. But again, decisions become better.
Decisions. So that's mindset is one. Let's get to number two.
Mindset is one from shifting from thinking as an employee to showing
Mm,
up as a business.
that's a
Number
business
two, I
owner.
think we did kind of touch on, which is a little bit different. It falls under mindset, but it's a mindset to money, approach to money. That is
Yeah.
something that I see all of the time.
Mm,
And the third one is being afraid of success. See, and I use that
mm,
term. I'm very specific about being afraid of success because there are business owners who are going to tell you, oh, no, 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 I don't want to fail. No, 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 you're afraid to succeed. Because sometimes it's a little bit mind boggling to think, what do you mean I can grow this business to 10 million and that my personal income, if this is so foreign to you as a concept because of the circle that you're in, from in your personal life, in your professional life, um, in your social life, that this is something that's beyond that group that you're in, you'll self sabotage to keep yourself within that space so you don't feel uncomfortable, afraid of success.
Let's talk about, you just mentioned self sabotage. What did that look like? Because I'm sure people are going to listen to this podcast or see this and like, I wouldn't do that. I'm trying to make this money.
Nope, happens all the time. Self sabotage would
Tell
be
us.
something like,
Yeah.
you need to grow, but guess what? In order to grow, you need to open up another location or move to a more expensive location. Well, I don't have the money for that, but it's kind of like this internal, unconscious way of making decisions. Because in the doing of this action, it's going to start outwardly appearing that you are successful, which many people shirk from because they're not used to it. I'll use another example that's not so big. For example, I was working with one attorney, but she was amazing. She was great, right? Very highly coachable. Absolutely loved her because she was just open to what was different, even if it made her uncomfortable. And so she was moving her home, and has a very very young family, two young kids. She's married, and in the moving of the home, while advising, I said, I don't want you doing anything. What do you mean? Like, I have to move? I mean, I got to do something. No, you don't. I would like you to hire professional organizers from the beginning, before you move, to pack up your house so you don't lift a finger. And I want them on the back end of your home. Now, mind you, I explain why I'm giving advice on the personal side of her life when I'm coaching on her business. All right? I want you to hire professional organizers on both ends of the move, get movers to do the actual move, and you stay in a hotel during the move. Now, this was something very foreign. She did not grow up wealthy. Her business is doing really well, and she was like, she was nervous about it, but she's like, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll take your advice because so far it hasn't hurt. And when she did it, she actually did it. At the end of the move, she was like, holy crap, I get it now. I didn't lose one day of work. Nothing got interrupted. Nothing was impacted by this move, which generally is disruptive in its nature. And she's like, you have to see my house. She's like, even my closet, my clothes are hung, color organized. My kitchen cabinet, the spices are labeled alphabetically. And she's like, I could not have done that. I would still be trying to unpack. But she had to spend money to do that, though. And she also had to look at doing something like that is kind of like, ooh, what, you think you're somebody to have, like, to do something like that? Versus a conversation I had with a different business owner who needed to move, needed to get a business, an office. I'm like, you need the office? Well, I don't have the money for that. I mean, you're working out of your home. We're about to work on marketing. What are we going to do? Have your clients come to your home? But that would look like, I am, and again, that was the key word, look like, the perception of success, because no one else. And so this is one of those things, we hear it as kids, we're told this, we hear it. Show me your friends, I'll tell you who you are. People think that stops when you're in elementary school. That carries with you to the end. When you are growing in your growth, I want to see who your friends are. Who's your circle? Because wherever that circle is where you will be. So if you're at the top of your circle, that's where you're going to stay unless you change it. Now, when I say this, some people would, take that and misinterpret that I'm saying, okay, you become more successful, turn your back on everybody you've kind of known who's been in your life. That is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you want to grow in your own personal journey, you are reading more. You're investing in your own personal growth. You're learning how to make decisions differently. And what you're going to find is, if you are making decisions in a way that's counterproductive or counter to what your current circle is making, you need to start finding another circle where those decisions are now normal, where those conversations are now normal. It doesn't mean you
Yeah,
stop talking to that one group. It means you need to
yeah,
start finding another group where you can get the exposure to people who talk strategy, who talk growth, where having personal, what we consider luxuries, isn't just because it's the sign of success, it's because there's a direct correlation in how it makes your life easier to continue doing more of what is most important to you.
it's in some ways, it's not that different than say when you were maybe in high school or college or whatever, and you were hanging out with a certain group of people and doing certain things, and maybe your grades suffer for that, for example, and then you realize in order to get my grades where I need to get them, I might need to just change the group of people I'm around. Not there's anything wrong with them. It's just that at all. It's just that you're at a different place. You have different goals,
I'm so glad you
and you
bring
have
that
to.
up.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the example of this young man that I mentor. And through this amazing program, I don't want to give it a shout out because it's a nonprofit. It's in the Northeast called America Needs You. And this program is designed for first generation college students to mentor them in their sophomore and junior years of college because the dropout rate of first generation college students it's very high has nothing to do with intelligence. In fact, they're a very intelligent group, but because in generally they don't have the mentorship of those who've navigated college life, they have a higher dropout rate. But through this program, anyone, the kids who are in this program has not only a high graduate, like 96% is a crazy graduation rate. Most of them end up going to grad school simply because of this exposure to a different mindset and a different group of people to now put them on a different trajectory. So this young man that I was paired with, he was in the U.S. When we first met. By that time, about 5 years. His native language French and Arabic. So he learned English when he came to the U.S. At the time, he was attending community college in New Jersey, and he wants to be an attorney. In guiding him, right, he was like, what I asked him what his plan was, what his why was, and he wanted to become an attorney. He wants to become an attorney because he is in the U.S. on an asylum visa, and the country that he left, his family is still there. There's a lot of unrest, and he wants to be able to go back, get involved in politics to have meaningful change in his country to benefit his family. I'm like, good. Always remember that. That's a powerful why. But now let's talk about who he was surrounded by. So now we're mentoring, and he's in community college. I'm like, we have to transfer now into a 4 year university in order for you to get an undergrad so you could go to college. And he wanted to in New Jersey. He's like, I want to go to Princeton and I want to do this. And I'm like, okay, why would you want to go to Princeton? It's a great university. Doesn't have a law program though. Doesn't even have a grad program. Like, it doesn't have a law program. But yet you're right across the river and you've got great schools. You've got Columbia University, NYU, many universities that's just amazing that you could apply to that would be more in line with where you want to. And so his thinking, because of who he was surrounded by, everyone in his circle was like, the best school to go to is Princeton. No idea of strategy and whether that would be something that would be beneficial for him in his why. So in guiding him, I'm like, go ahead, you can apply to Princeton. That is one of the things you want to do. But since I'm your mentor, I'm going to encourage you to apply to Columbia, NYU, because they have great programs. And in the application of it, it was a lot of resistance from him because what I was doing in the mentoring and what was happening to him was he was being exposed to a different way of looking at things that was just so foreign to him and the circle that he was in. In writing the essays, I can't tell you how many times I pushed back and was like, this is not. He would write as though he thought. Stream of thought with no structure, no beginning, no middle, no end. I'm like, when you're writing for academia, tell me what you're about to write it, tell me what you just wrote about. If you think about that, that's the basic structure for any writing piece. So, and his response was, but my professor told me that I'm the best. Like, I got A's and I'm good. I'm like, sir, did your professor apply to an Ivy League college get in and complete their studies there? No? Okay. So I'm going to challenge that belief system that you have that you're good at what you do because I am looking at it and I'm reviewing it from a point of having gone through that path to say this is not going to get you there. He was very resistant. And the only reason he continued doing it was because of the requirement of the program to follow the advice of your mentor. But he did it though. He hung in there and he did it. Not only did he get accepted to Columbia University, he got a full ride. And if he graduates with a 3.5 GPA, which he's on track to do, he gets 150 towards grad school. Now, in his first semester of Columbia University, he called me up and was like, "Hey, I think I need to take a semester off because he started talking about all the problems that's happening in the school." I let him talk, and then I got on the phone with him and I said, "Okay, let's have this conversation. You want to take a semester off because other students are complaining about blah, and the school was going to go online. It was close around the pandemic time, right? And this wasn't the experience you're going to have." I'm like, "Then, sir, what business do you have wanting, again, we go back to the why, wanting to lead a country in civil unrest? If you can't put up with this little inconvenience, I want you to write a letter to your mother right now and tell her you're going to take a semester off because, well, it's going to be online and I really want it to be on campus and blah, 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 blah." I want you to tell her that and understand the gravity of your decisions. And if the students you're talking to want to quit, I want you to find out the students to talk to who are not quitting. He wasn't aware that he started gravitating with people who were not aligned with his own personal goals. And he did. He followed my advice. And he found a group of, they weren't looking, I'm like, it's very different. Be around the people who are aligned with where you want to be. If your current professional network or social network are people who are fine where they are, but it's not where you want to be, change that circle. Your
So, so,
conversations will be different.
so let me move this back to that lesson that you. It was a great lesson, and move this back to the business owner because a couple of things
Hmm.
that you said is because you started this. We started this podcast with decisions, a series of
Decisions.
decisions,
Yes.
and basically, if I can, capture a little bit is you have to know what your why is,
Yes.
and then you make decisions that's consistent with that why and consistent with you accomplishing or getting toward that why,
Right.
right? And when you speak of people in your circle, your
Mhm.
immediate circle, you want to surround yourself with people who are like minded.
Mhm.
It's not that you cast off anybody else; it's that you just need to
That's right.
because what you're saying is the real reason that you want to be around surround yourself with those type of people is not only because they're going to bring certain increase your knowledge, right? But they're also going to be there when you're going to have those challenges, and you might want to go, I can't do this.
That's the
Or
key.
and that's
That's
what you
the
were, and that's
key.
what you're getting at.
That's that's the
He
key.
has
When
you
you
as
have the
mentor.
challenges, right. That's right.
But
But
challenges
because
are
here's the
coming.
thing though, remember, people when someone feels that they are not able to overcome a particular challenge, it's easier to tell other people that they're going to have the same problem.
A lot of co-signing. A
So
lot
you
of yeah,
want
yeah,
you
a lot of
want people who've
co-signing.
overcome those challenges. That's who you want to talk to, not the ones who couldn't make it past it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Um, but also, I mean, is that one of the roles of a CEO, one of the major roles of CEO. I mean, one of it is, I mean, of a fractional CEO is obviously help you with your strategic plan, developing the you, figuring out what your why is, and developing a kind of a roadmap to get to that why. That's one, huge. But the other part is kind of what you again take it from your story with this young man is accountability, right? Let's talk about the role that the fractional CEO plays in keeping the business owner or owners accountable to the things they say they want to do.
Now every CEO is different. I have a very
Of
very
course,
specific style, which
of
is,
course.
you know, let's talk. For me, when I think of accountability with a business owner, I
Hmm.
am talking about the decisions and the outcomes. So if we've agreed on a certain strategy for a desired outcome and a decision is being made, I will have that hard conversation. What are we trying to achieve here? If we are trying to hit this goal, which will allow you to drive off into the sunset, why are we doing X? X is costing you money, which is going to make you fall short of this goal that you're trying to achieve. So the accountability is always, I will always bring it back to the why. Why are we doing this instead of this if this is further off the path of where we're trying to go? Do you want to take the scenic route? Is there a good reason to say you want to take the scenic route? Now, if you want to take the scenic route, now let's talk about that and why, and
Mm-hmm.
let's make sure that that's what the plan is. But the plan that, as outlined, is not to take the scenic route. The plan is to take the fastest route, not with congestion, right, in the best vehicle. I will use this an analogy. If we are trying to get to a certain place by a certain time, and we have an engine that's leaking and rattling, and we may get there, we just don't know when and in what shape.
That's right. That's right.
So as a CEO, I am questioning the decisions about, wait, what vehicle are we in? Wait, who's in the vehicle? Because if something happens to the vehicle, we need the capable people to fix it, change it, bring it so that we can continue on our journey.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, accountability is having those conversations, and they're usually very uncomfortable conversations. At this level, they're not pleasant. They're not pleasant conversations, but guess what? Those are the conversations that are harder for business owners to have with someone, because you can't do that with your employees. You can't
No.
really do it all the time with your spouse or your partner, because it
Mm-hmm.
becomes like the business takes over the whole relationship. Then who do you have those conversations with? If you don't have a mentor, you can get an advisor like a CEO. Me personally, I'm full time as a CEO. I have a mentor. I just happen to have a network of friends who, people are like, oh my God, those are your friends. Like my circle, I am like humbled by my circle, and I'll say it proud. No, like I, I can be judged for it, but I don't care. But my mentor runs a multi-million-dollar, um, has sold companies for hundreds of millions, and is growing a very fast company, a global company. So I'm getting advice from someone who's been there and done that, because I know that I also need mentoring in order to grow.
Sure. Sure.
So we need this. If you're running a business, getting that person who can have those uncomfortable conversations, that's going to challenge those decisions that are steeped in trauma, um, in your business without being judged. And that's the fear, right? Because it requires a certain level of vulnerable,
Yeah.
vulnerable. I can't get out. Of being
Vulnerability.
vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to work with an advisor.
Sure.
You can't just say this is the front and let's just have this official business meeting.
That's right.
It is having the conversations about the fact that, okay, your marriage is on the rocks and you're pretending that everything is okay. And because it's on the rocks, it's distracting you from work. So you're going to have some very hard conversations about what you want to do with your personal life, because it's showing up in your professional life.
And so obviously the reality of it is, it's not like you're going to engage the services of a fractional CEO and you begin with being open.
Mm-mm.
This is what I mean. To each their own. I mean,
It's
obviously,
ongoing.
like
It's a
any other
process.
relationship, it's built over time. This
Yes,
is
it
not
is.
a come and
It's
fix
not a,
this problem
yes,
and then I'm done with you. This is I think you would agree that once you engage the service of a fractional CEO, is not a for 1 quarter or 2 quarters, right? It's
yes,
a
it is.
lengthy thing. I would tell you this, and my personal experience as far as where the accountability is concerned, is a difference to me, and see if you agree with me, between say a personal coach, even mentors, and the like, as opposed to a CEO, a fractional CEO. A fractional CEO actually knows what's happening in your business.
Yes,
You're responsible to your fractional CEO to provide the numbers. Yeah, the numbers, right? Not just what I think, not just what I'm afraid of, not what this. It's your numbers, right? Including your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet, and all those other kind of things, and whatever other metrics they may want to be able to view. When you talk about your marketing, they're not going to just say, "Okay, where are you marketing?" I mean, are you holding your vendors or whatever may be accountable to you? What questions should you ask? All those kind of. This is more. Is
yes,
way more, so it's part of your business. It's not just you,
right.
but it's also holding you account. Because I know my current CEO, we meet 3 times a month, right? Different times as far as how long, but we meet 3 times a month. I'm just like I am when I was back in school. I was like, oh, I got some things to do. I better work on this, and it kind of makes you work on some things that when you're just caught up in life and running your business, you may not. The phone rings here, the phone rings there, but you're like, wait a minute, I have a meeting with my CEO, my fractional CEO, and I need to make sure I have this in place. And I've thought about the things that we're going to discuss on that upcoming meeting and so forth and so on, and what's consistent with my business plan. I cannot believe we are almost at an hour, and I told you I would be very respectful of your time because you have many things you need to do.
I do.
I'm fortunate that we have a 2 hour a 2 hour difference in time where you are where I am. You're in Houston. I'm here in the East Coast. But two questions before to end this, and I greatly appreciate you giving your time. If it's one piece of advice that you would give a small business owner, mid-sized business owner, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to acknowledge your limitations and then seek out the guidance to bridge that gap. When you're trying to figure it out by yourself, that's where problems happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually where the areas are that that anchor the business from growth. So that is just it. And even if you don't know how to articulate where the limitations are, but trust that intuition, you're like, it's not working, I don't know why, then you should be very, very persistent in accessing advice from professionals who could guide you. You start off with a fractional service. It's amazing because you don't have the full cost of someone who's full-time, and you're getting enough advice that will keep you from being just anchored in despair, in unprofitability, in whatever else that's probably. It'll help you pull that anchor up and start moving. So knowing that limitations, acknowledging it, and then seeking out advice to bridge that gap.
And so if I could say it, and add to that, or say it a different way, running a business can be lonely, but you don't have to do it alone.
That's right.
And the second thing, what does Janelle do for fun?
Oh my God, I'm boring.
Maybe.
Here's the thing.
You sit at the pool. I know you sit at the pool and you.
I do. So I will relax. I live in Houston. The weather I love the heat. I love it. So I will go outside and sit in my hot tub or sit in the pool. But I also love to read. I love to read. I am reading something every day. I'm reading Robert Greene's book, the 48 the laws of human psychology, whatever it is, human nature, the 48 laws of human nature, whatever it is. And I just love to read. As you can see, I have some books here that I absolutely love. I love reading, and I have more bookcases. And so for me, like, I just get so excited when I do that. And then occasionally when I have time, the problem is sometimes time, I love to bake. I make some really creative cakes. My children grew up always having like the best like birthday cakes at their parties because I could make those like carved cakes. So they just they're kind of spoiled because they look at when a cake isn't up to their standard now because they grew up with these custom. They would design it sometimes, and they're just used to that. And to me, it's like baking is this creative outlet that's therapeutic. I just get lost in it.
Yeah.
And it's the art, it's the process of creation because my mind is engaged in creating something from a drawing. It's not like a pan or something like that. I have to carve it, and it's like I have to paint it with food coloring to make it come to life. So I absolutely love that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. I'm sure we'll be
Thank
speaking
you for
very
having
soon
me.
in the future, and it was fantastic information. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marlon.
All right, bye-bye. Don't go. If you are a business owner tired of losing sleep at night or feeling like you're getting your ass kicked and need a strong advocate in your corner, call the team at the Griffith Law Group, where we defend the Davids from the Goliaths, at 202-499-5160 and schedule a free consultation with me. Let's talk.